By the way, my name is Gary Johnson, and I'm a fake hitman.
Oh Lord, please don't let me be misunderstood.
Skip Hollandsworth's got really quite a nose for a twisted true crime tale. I read everything he writes just for that reason. He's such a good writer, and yeah, just has a real angle on life and a sense of humor. So it's all there in the article. Unlike Bernie, which we told pretty much that story, this one we really took a flight of fancy. Where his story ends, we're not even halfway through the movie. Like any good nonfiction writer, he just has an archive boxes full of all his research and all that. So he just sent me a few boxes, and you know, it was from a lot of these videos and recordings were from the 90s. So there's like bad VHS, bad cameras, you know, but watching these, you know, soliciting murder with the real Gary Johnson, it was pretty fascinating and amazingly banal. You know, someone's deciding to end someone else's life, and it's just like they're buying a used car. I mean, it's really unbelievable how, you know, straight up, and yeah, it was funny. It's just so, I found it so bizarrely funny that people think this is a real thing. You know, the film really deconstructs just the notion that you can just go hire someone to kill somebody that you don't, you know, it's like, it's such a bizarre, dark notion. The real Gary Johnson did that. He would dress differently and do different things, customizing his look for the client. And so we took that, you know, tenfold, and, you know, we had more fun with it. But he did little things like that. Glenn called me up during the pandemic and asked me, you know, he was talking about this for Hitman Star. Glenn, I read that a long time ago, and I've had a couple meetings on it. I've been following that story for years. You know, it's been optioned a few times. People don't quite know what to do with it. And I said, frankly, it's great. I love the character. I love that world. It's so weird and funny and strange, but it's just the same thing, kind of, you know, someone solicits murder, you arrest them. You know, it's like, it never takes flight. It's just repetition. But once we opened the floodgate about, oh yeah, what if she gotten back in touch with him? And oh, then he's trapped in that identity. So it was a fun, creative process. If you're gonna do it, you know, deliver the goods. You know, that's the whole point of it's like, I remember even casting Audra, it was like, well, she's got to be so hot you would give up everything. You know, there's the great femme fatale. So she fits that bill, like, okay, I'm going to risk everything I have to be with her. And that's what Gary's, you know, does. And so, yeah, it was, and steamy, you know. I like those movies, Body Heat. You know, it felt like we were kind of an 80s movie. Like a lot of people in the South, I like New Orleans. I've always, you know, I've been in and out of there over time. But it was really fun to work there. I mean, New Orleans it seems like the right city where this story could take place. There's something, it's kind of like the metaphor for the movie. I always say the people are great, and there's a kind of a lawless undercurrent to New Orleans that everyone just sort of accepts. So it feels like kind of a place where this kind of crazy stuff could go on. I don't never think in genre terms until I'm into it pretty far. I remember working on this going, yeah, this is kind of Noirish, you know, if she comes back, that's like, but then it's like, well, they're also, you know, we made some big choices that she's not this Black Widow. It's like, well, that's been done. You know, that's you know, you realize you're in a genre like noir. You're like, huh, the tropes of the genre are, you know, she's this and he ends up dead or in prison. And, you know, we know the rules of the game. I'm like, well, we don't need to do that. It's like, what if they're actually, and we just kind of took a turn at screwball comedy. What if they're really meant to be together, and all this stuff is really the thing keeping them apart, you know, the basis of a good screwball comedy. So it was like, yeah, Wilder turns at Preston Sturges. And so, yeah, and there's kind of right on top of each other. So I don't know, it was just fun to kind of play around with that notion and try to do things you haven't necessarily seen before. I don't know if anything's original under the sun, but at least you're maybe mashing things up in a slightly different way.